Jessica. Act 11, Scene 3. The door to the waiting room pushed open and another doctor walked in. Same lime green scrubs and matching cap. This doctor also wore a mask tied around his face. Jeffrey started hyperventilating again. Mom and I calmed him. We held hands on Jeffrey's lap. I squeezed Mom's hand and she squeezed back. Was this it? The doctor reached behind his head and untied the mask. He was our guy. I saw him take that deep breath as he walked toward us. Luke. I saw Dr. Wilkins approach us. My heart took off like a car that has its gas pedal mashed to the floor. Please, please, please have good news, I repeated over and over again in my head. Mom squeezed my shoulder. Dr. Wilkins found a chair and sat with us. Good news, gang, he said. Mr. Terupt made it through the surgery. Our faces broke into many smiles and we let our breaths of relief. I gave Mom a little hug. We were able to stop the bleeding, but your teacher remains in a coma, Dr. Wilkins continued. Why? Anna said. I thought that if you stopped the bleeding, he'd wake up. Her voice rose and shook a little. I thought that was supposed to happen. Anna spoke for all of us, but instead of Dr. Wilkins answering, Jeffrey did. Now it's wait and see, Jeffrey said. He took a deep breath in and let it out slow. That the bleeding stopped is a good sign. Deep breath. But that doesn't guarantee Terupt will wake up. We have to wait and see. More deep, slow breathing. Why was he so anxious? His difficulties made me realize he hadn't visited the hospital, but always seemed interested in my report. What was Jeffrey's deal? That's right. We wait and see and keep hoping, Dr. Wilkins said. Can we see him? Peter asked. Not today, Peter. Mr. Terupt is in a post-surgical room and being watched carefully. Why does he need to be watched carefully? Anna asked, her voice barely a whisper. I thought he was okay now. We monitor every patient closely after a major surgery. It's normal, Dr. Wilkins promised. Mr. Terupt is doing well at this point. We sat there looking at him like a team that had just lost their big game. Hey guys, don't give up now, Dr. Wilkins said. This is when your teacher needs you most. This is good news today. And then Anna came through in the clutch. She took my lead and said what we needed to hear. He's going to make it. Trust me on this one. Be positive. Mr. Terupt told me that once, and he was right. Jeffrey. It was wait and see for Michael, too. He didn't make it. That was when Mom and Dad's lives suddenly crashed down different paths. I don't know if their paths will ever come together again, but it's okay to hope. I hope Terupt makes it. I'm trying hard to believe, Anna. Jessica. Act 11, Scene 4. That was it. Wait and see. It felt so anticlimactic to sit all day expecting an outcome, only to find that it was time to go home and wait some more. People trickled out of the waiting room at different times. Some of the adults left first, probably because they're more accustomed to being patient. Miss Kelsey and Mrs. Warner left, then some of my classmates. Only a few people were still sitting, Anna and Terry, and Danielle and her mother. When Mom and I rallied ourselves to leave, Lexi and Jeffrey came with us. We were their ride home. Wait and see. Anna. The waiting room slowly emptied. Next thing I knew, my mom and I were sitting directly across from Danielle and her mother with hardly anyone else around. I felt uneasy, knowing her mother hated us, but I took a chance. Danielle, can we pray with you? I asked. Danielle didn't hesitate 1 second. Sure, she said. We bowed our heads and Danielle led us in a prayer for Mr. Terupt. It was a beautiful prayer, and afterward I thought her mother's eyes looked differently upon me. Mom and I left after that, leaving Danielle and her mother, Luke and his mother, Peter, Mrs. Williams, and Miss Newberry. How close were Mr. Terupt and Miss Newberry, both without wedding rings? I didn't know, but my heart suddenly hurt for the teacher from across the hall. She was definitely hoping to have him back. You didn't even need to be good at noticing things to see that. So many of us need you, Mr. Terupt. Keep fighting. Danielle. Can we pray with you? Anna asked me. I felt alarm rush through my mom's body. How could these sinners want to pray with us? Mom must have wondered. Sure, I said. Dear God, we're down here playing the wait-and-see game now. It'd be great if you could keep the waiting part short and give us back Mr. Terupt. There are people hoping he wakes up. There are lots of people hoping he wakes up. Please give us the strength to keep hoping and believing as we go on waiting. And God, I whispered this last part because Peter was sitting near us. I also ask that you give extra comfort to Peter and Jeffrey too. I'm not sure what's up with him. Anna's smart. She wants her families to get along, so she asked to pray together, knowing that God is most important to my family. I know my mom can't think Terry's all bad if she's praying with us, and Anna is as nice and sweet as she is. At least I hope that's true. I've been asking God to help me get my family to see that Terry and Anna are good people. Jessica. Act 11, Scene 5. We dropped Lexi off first, then Jeffrey. I sat in the front passenger seat with Jeffrey, while Jeffrey in the back. Before he got out, I asked him, "You okay, Jeffrey?" "Yeah, I'm okay," he said. "Thanks for helping me in there." "Thanks, Mrs. Reitman." "You're welcome," we said together. "I'm sure everyone's wondering what's up with me," he said. "Don't worry, your secret is still safe," I said. Jeffrey opened the back door, but he didn't get out right away. "There's something I've been meaning to tell you, Jess. What happened to Terupt isn't your fault. You may need to stop thinking that it is." Jeffrey's words startled me. I did feel guilty. I'd roped Danielle and Anna into my wicked plan, which led to Peter's devastating snowball. "And why did it happen, Jeffrey?" I said. "I told you things happen for a reason, and I still don't know mine." "Neither do I," he said. "But not knowing the reason doesn't make it your fault." We sat quietly. Mom didn't say anything. I stared down at my hands. They longed for a book to hold. I fidgeted with my nails and cuticles instead. Then Jeffrey spoke again. "I know one thing, Jess." You've called me Jess twice now. "You've helped me. I haven't had someone to talk to in a long time. Thanks." We climbed out of our car and shut the door. Before driving away, we saw Jeffrey's mom standing at the front door to his house, waiting for him. But she wasn't wearing pajamas. They hugged. Mom and I had tears in our eyes as we drove away. More of Mr. Terupt at work, I just knew it. We hadn't driven very far before Mom broke the silence. "Jessica, I need to tell you some things that even adults have a hard time understanding, but I need you to try, okay?" I nodded and sat up straight in my seat to readjust my seatbelt. "I know you've been wrestling with the issue of whose fault Mr. Terupt's accident is, as have many of your classmates. Poor Peter's really struggling, and I'm afraid the only one that might help him is Mr. Terupt." Mom slowed to the stop sign and looked both ways. "So whose fault is it?" I asked, my voice rising. "Emotion can do that to you." Mom just went with the flow. She turned the car left and stepped on the accelerator. "Mr. Terupt," she said. I looked out my window. I didn't want to hear it. "Look, Jessica, you don't have to agree with me, and not everyone will, but you need to hear me out. Let me explain." Slowly, reluctantly, I looked at her. I didn't want her to be right. "Thank you," she said. "I told you it wasn't going to be easy." We slowed at a red light. All those instances with Peter earlier on this year, and with Luke's plant concoction and all the other mischief, Mom paused. "I think Mr. Terupt handled them the way he did because he was trying to teach you guys some personal responsibility." The light turned and my mom pushed the gas. "That's what cost him in the end. He let you play rough that day in the snow and hoped you wouldn't cross the line, but he made it your responsibility not to cross that line because he didn't intervene." "But how is that bad? Isn't that one of the reasons he was so special? Because he gave us those chances?" "Don't use the past tense, honey. He is special." "Fine," I said, annoyed, but glad to talk about him in the present. "But isn't it?" I was annoyed because I didn't want the conversation slowed. I wanted answers. I cracked my window, suddenly hot. I let the wind hit me in my face. "It is indeed one of the reasons he's special. But in the end, you're still just kids, and asking you to assume that much responsibility isn't fair. You can't be expected to handle it all the time, so that's why it's his fault." Mom spoke so calmly. I knew she was trying to keep me from getting too upset. "It's his fault for asking us to act like adults when we're just kids," I said, restating Mom's argument. "Whereas, if he had taken the responsibility out of our hands by making us stop playing rough, then there probably would never have been a snowball thrown." I looked at Mom. "That's right, exactly," she said. "Well, I think that makes about as much sense as Dad and his airhead bimbo." Our car swerved. Mom was in shock. We hadn't spoken about Dad in a while, but he and his stupid girlfriend boiled to the surface of my upset feelings. Plus, I have a strong vocabulary and could have probably selected a nicer word for her, though I doubt it. I could have chosen a more accurate one. "So now, if Mr. Terupt gets better, he's going to get into trouble. Is that right too?" "Not necessarily," Mom said, "and watch your language. Besides, to say airhead and bimbo is a bit redundant. though I'll agree, the new woman in your dad's life is a real floozy. The car slowed and Mom pulled into our driveway. She put the car in park and turned it off. I undid my seatbelt. Jessica, I've spoken to Miss Williams and to some of the other parents and adults at school on several different occasions. We've been talking because we're worried about how you're all dealing with this. Nobody wants to see Mr. Terupt get in trouble, including Mrs. Williams and the school. Everyone knows he's a great teacher. We all just want him to get better. Mom leaned over and gave me a hug. I hugged her back. You know, Terry told me the other day that Anna asked her if their situation is her fault. Anna's fault? I said, of course it isn't. Exactly, Mom said. And I hope you know what happened between your father and me is not at all your fault either. I needed to hear that. I hugged her again, but I didn't say anything because talking would have made me cry. And Mom was quiet too. I think for the same reason. Quiet love filled our car.